Hey, welcome back. Comic book hero. Long time, very long time. Haven't been able to get one of these done. You know, life, rough and tumble, rock and roll. But this was a great issue. Okay, loved it. Really wanted to get it out. So let's get rolling with it. Now, before we get into Doomsday Clock 10, because I never got a chance to get the other issues in, let's do a quick summary of Doomsday Clock 1 to 9. The Watchmen heroes from the Watchmen universe have found their way over to the DC universe proper, which is out of sorts because of something called the Superman theory. Now, the Superman theory is that the majority of superheroes have appeared in America after Superman because America is creating them to be this super fighting force. And of course, the rest of the world doesn't like that. Now, this is just a theory. But because of this particular theory, the rest of the world has been going on, and they're very distrustful of the states, very distrustful of superheroes, and it's been getting worse and worse. We see things in Gotham City where Batman, who's already this murky, dark figure, is trusted less and less to the point he's actually beaten down by a crowd. They pulled him by his cape. Not a good scene. Anyway, the Watchmen guys have come over from their universe because their universe is on the brink. See, Ozymandias came up with this great plan to save everything and try to get people to work together, but he got found out. Why? Because it's the Watchmen universe. What else could we expect for him to be found out? Now, he's trying to find Dr. Manhattan, who he's trailed to the DC universe proper. Or should we call that the DC metaverse? A little bit more on that later. So, they've arrived, and for some issues, they're trying to find him. Eventually, they do. But Dr. Manhattan is his usual apathetic self, like, I'm not doing it. I'm not going back. I don't really care. He's intrigued with a little experiment that he's conducting within the DC metaverse. See, some years ago, Dr. Manhattan arrived in the DC universe. Now, this is a sliding time scale. So for us, it's just for this particular story. For Dr. Manhattan, let's say about 6 years ago. Clue in. Anyway, he decides that he's going to alter history in the DC universe. Now, this is very good because a lot of people have been saying that Dr. Manhattan has the power to alter reality. Now, altering reality and altering history, two totally different things. Altering reality is literally, I can come and with the wave of a hand, as people were telling me with Dr. Manhattan, I can just change how things are supposed to be. This never happened, that never happened, so on and so forth. But what Dr. Manhattan does is he alters history. See, he goes back, at least he's in this particular timeline. When he enters around he enters on April 18th, 1938, which is Superman Day. Yes. Anyway, so he enters on that particular day and he conspires to move things that should not have been moved. Alan Scott, who is the original Green Lantern, he survives, a near fatal train accident by reaching out for the Green Lantern. And with that, he's given the power that he needs to save himself and to become a superhero. Dr. Manhattan moves that lantern about 6 inches away from where Alan Scott could reach it. Alan Scott ends up dying. And because he ends up dying, the Justice Society of America is never formed. Now, supposedly, this change also leads into a whole bunch of other changes. The most important of all being what happens to Superman. When Superman now arrives on the planet, or rather when he arrives on Earth, instead of the origin that we are familiar with, he arrives, he's taken in by his parents, his father dies, mother tends to live on. This time, both of his parents are killed in a car accident, and he's more distant. No one would want to say aloof, but he doesn't have the strongest connection to the humanity that we've seen before. Now, Dr. Manhattan applauds this. He's like, yeah, I more relate to Superman now because he seems to have he lacks that emotional content that we had from him before. So what we learn is that the new 52 universe, in terms of those 6 years I was talking about, is the result of Dr. Manhattan tinkering with time, not altering reality. The reality was altered when the Flash went back and made certain changes, and when the DC universe proper was merged with the Wildstorm universe, which was at the end of Flashpoint. But that Flashpoint universe, however it was supposed to play out, didn't happen because of what Dr. Manhattan did when he arrived. So we have two different things conspiring at this point. I'm not sure how they're going to resolve this because Dr. Manhattan seemed to be shown to have a lot more power and a lot more abilities than were shown in Doomsday Clock 9 and 10, where he's doing some, pretty well. I mean, look, the things I can't say are any less awesome. He takes on the entire Justice League, the Teen Titans, the Marvel family, and just totally wipes the floor with them. They don't really have too much of a chance, which is, I mean, pretty curious. You would think that they would have done a little bit better, but he's being shown as just, they don't have it. Whatever it is that needs to be taken care of in terms of taking care of Dr. Manhattan, they don't have it. Wipes the floor with them. The only person who's not, actually, three people aren't there. Batman isn't there because he's recuperating. Wonder Woman isn't there because she's giving an address for the United Nations. Superman isn't there because in a previous issue, Superman had been exposed to a large explosion of energy, which was actually caused by Dr. Manhattan that put him in a coma. Now, this conveniently keeps him from being with the rest of the Justice League, Teen Titans, so on and so forth, when the floor is wiped by Dr. Manhattan. And Dr. Manhattan is able to see through time. However, he sees that there's going to come a point in time where he faces Superman. And when he faces Superman, Superman, with his bloodied hands, takes a swing at him. It's going to be taking a punch, and it is the last thing that Dr. Manhattan sees. He doesn't see anything after that. And so he keeps posing the question, does Superman kill him, or does Dr. Manhattan destroy the entire universe? See, it's not as simple as him killing Superman. He doesn't see anything. So it's either he has wiped out this entire universe, or Superman has wiped him out with one punch. Now, some people would say, well, Superman can't punch Dr. Manhattan. I entreat you to read Justice League 23. Who knows? Maybe we'll do a review on it. But in there, we'll see that a punch from Superman packs a lot of power. So we get into Doomsday Clock 10, and here we get the origins of what happened in terms of Dr. Manhattan's tinkering with the DC Universe. He arrives, and when he's there, he can't really see too well in time. So he fixes himself on a guy by the name of Carver Coleman, who goes on to become a prominent actor, wins awards and so on and so forth, but is pretty down and out when Dr. Manhattan first sees it. This allows him to see the DC Universe. He notices that the DC Universe seems to coalesce around one particular incident, and that is Superman's appearance. First, he sees that Superman appears in 1938, then 1956, then again in 1986, and so on and so forth. Now, each of these years is representative of the different ages of comics. The first, of course, being the Golden Age, then the Silver Age. The Bronze Age is skipped over, even though that shouldn't have been done, because the Bronze Age is very distinctly different from the Silver Age. Nonetheless, it's skipped over for the Copper Age, which is 1986, the beloved reboot where John Byrne was on the title. Many people are still very, very happy about those particular issues. And then we go on. We'll see again Superman's origin changes with 0 Hour, and then again with Birthright, and then Infinite Crisis, again with Final Crisis. All of these particular changes. But Dr. Manhattan notes that anytime Superman's origin changes, it doesn't affect just him, but it affects the entire DC universe. He then also realizes that the DC universe itself isn't quite just a mere universe, it's a metaverse. It's constantly changing. And because it's constantly changing, it affects the multiverse that originates out of the DC metaverse. So you have the DC metaverse, and then all the other universes pretty much correspond with that DC metaverse in some way or another. Meaning, we'll go to different places and we'll see that there's a Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, even though they might be slightly different or completely different, but these people, these characters still exist in this myriad amount of other realities, in these other universes. Fine. However, all of that stems from Superman. It all revolves and wraps around Superman, and Dr. Manhattan is quite intrigued by this. He looks into the future and says that even in the future, 3,000 years into the future, it's still about the importance of Superman, or Superboy, as we see in that particular page, where Superboy is the reason why the Legion of Superheroes comes into play, as opposed to Superman. But it is the example, okay, and the introduction of Superman or Superboy into the timeline that gets everything started. Now, that's in story. Out of story, we understand that 1938 is the debut of Superman in Action Comics #1. No Superman, we don't have DC Comics as we do today. No Superman, we don't have superhero comics. And this leads a really nice play, because as much as I like to stick in story, Superman affects life out of story just as well as he affects in story as well. See, because Superman's the first superhero, And because he is still viable and was successful for the last 80 years, it's not so easy just to push him to the side. And then if you try to remove him from history, which is already canon, you cannot remove Superman from the timeline. You cannot remove him from history. If you did, it really crumbles the entire universe, because then it becomes, how did the rest of this stuff happen? And then it wipes out 80 years of the history in reality, which you can't do. People were like, well, hey, what became of Superman? Look, guys gave Marvel a hard enough time for the clone story with Spider-Man. Could you imagine something where Superman never existed and they wanted to make that the reality in comics, knowing that that would conflict with our own actual reality? So it's a great premise, and it can really get you thinking. It's very metatextual, but of course it's going to be metatextual if we're dealing with the metaverse. Correct? Anyway, Dr. Manhattan continues to look upon the timeline, and he's trying to wonder why is that Superman is so important to the DC universe or metaverse. I'm just going to use them interchangeably now. He realizes, okay, that the DC universe is comprised of a strong, incredibly strong, resilient hope, and Superman is representative of that hope. After he makes the changes, even to Superman, the DC universe starts to fight back, and it fights back in bringing back Wally West, who alerts Dr. Manhattan that he's not going to get away with this, that the changes that he made are not going to stand still. Dr. Manhattan comes to learn by the end of the issue that this is a universe of heroes, okay, and villains, good and evil. And in a universe where he has tried to submerge the hope that is struggling to fight back, he has become the villain in this universe. Now, that realization lets him know that in this universe where the hero always defeats the villain, he's not looking too sharp right now. Okay, the DC universe is going to find a way to rout itself. Hope is going to find a way to overtake his cynicism. And it's going to find its way to overtake his cynicism in its greatest champion, and that's Superman. So that pretty much summarizes the issue. And it's a great issue if you haven't had a chance to read it. For a Superman fan like myself, it was very rewarding. You get to see if you like history, if you were somebody who read the History of the DC Universe by Marv Wolfman, both part 1 and 2, okay, it's really nice to see how they play this thing out so that you can make it one cohesive whole. It's like sitting down and reading an encyclopedia almost, but with better pictures. So here, it's a very streamlined version of that. And some things are left out, okay? Some things people will say, well, hey, I'm not too sure. But the overall strength of the issue, okay, is an understanding of what the DC universe is supposed to represent. It is supposed to be a hopeful place. It is supposed to be a place where you can have the happy ending. It's not the Marvel universe, okay, that was predicated on these characters who were supposed to be as close to life or closer to life than the DC universe. These guys had problems, and they could be jealous, and they could make mistakes, and they could be heroes, okay, and fail to save the day, and somehow they would have to come back from it and keep on going. Okay? That's the Marvel universe. The DC universe, these guys are heroes born for the most part, and we expect them to be able to come through at the end of the day. It would be unacceptable for the people of the DC universe, citizens of the DC universe, Earth and the universe itself, to believe that Superman is not going to come through and save the day. If you look at Final Crisis 7, everything is pretty much done. And who is the last person around to reboot and restart the universe, to save it? It's Superman, who sacrifices his own energies in order to start a miracle machine and thereby bring back the DC universe proper. He also says when he's doing this, he gets one wish from the miracle machine, and the wish is for the best possible ending, which translates into what? A happy ending. So those type of things, the acknowledgement of Superman's importance to the DC universe, very rewarding in terms of if you're into DC history like myself, or just comic history. In terms of the character, very much rewarding. See, this is what I wish they had done with Superman in, say, when it's his 75th year, which is a horrible, it was a horribly celebrated year for Superman. Besides Man of Steel coming out and just really doing some awful things in terms of it, there were so many things that they did in trying to make Superman cool or relatable. And Superman is not supposed to be relatable. He's supposed to be an aspirational character. We're supposed to want to be him, okay? Not, well, I understand him. No, we're supposed to want to be him at the end of the day. That's what most that's what most characters. We connect to them because we want to be them. If we don't, then if we don't connect to them in that particular manner, then it becomes, oh, I don't find this character relatable. You don't relate to them because you don't want to be them. Okay, it's no different. If you don't like dogs, I'm pretty certain that you're not going to want to be a dog, okay, in your next life if they ask you, hey, would you like to come back as an animal? That relatability is just, hey, what would I like to be? Not, hey, he goes through problems like me. We don't care about that. We want to be that person. We want to be that particular character. And in terms of Superman, okay, what was crucial in this was that understanding that he didn't need to be relatable. He is the hope of the DC universe. He's the hope of the DC universe personified. That's why he's so bloody powerful. That's why he'll spring up power out of nowhere in order to save the day. Because you get rid of Superman, you get rid of the hope of the DC universe. That can't happen. It can't happen in story, okay, because that's not what the DC universe is predicated on. It can't happen out of story either. Okay, if you want to be cynical, yeah, these guys, of course, want their money, but the only way to keep everything viable is with that hopeful notion that you have been doing for the last 80 years, and they sort of lost the ball. They did drop the ball on that back in 2011. A lot of guys, well, yeah, it was very successful. They made a lot of money. Well, yeah, these are comic book guys for the most part. You put up a whole bunch of brand new number ones, you're going to make a lot of money. You just say you were going to reboot and start the universe and everybody's going to be different. And this isn't your dad's Superman. This isn't your mom's Wonder Woman. Of course you'll make money. And then you hit that wall. Where do you go from there? They realized, what we had before there wasn't anything wrong with it. The idea we were trying to mass produce something that was already what it was supposed to be. It was hopeful. Superman is supposed to be that hero that comes and saves the day. They took that away and made him somebody who was no longer strongly connected to humanity, somebody who was, in some cases, downright scary. And that's not supposed to be Superman. Here, this reaffirms what Superman is supposed to be in relationship to readers, in relationship to reality, and in relationship in story in terms of his overall characterization, the hope of the DC universe. And that when you change Superman, when you change the hope of the overall universe, you change everything. Now, look at Superman Reborn, where Superman's merged once again. It's his new 52 self and his previous self are merged. Once you have changed Superman's origin, it changes, well, when did he meet Batman? When did he meet Wonder Woman? Okay, when did it become okay for these heroes to come out? Who inspires the Legion? All of these things emanate from that particular person emerging and deciding that I'm going to help people simply because it's right. So this gets addressed in Doomsday Clock 10, and it's done very well. It was a top book. It was talked about widely, internet and in person. Tried to get as many people to read it as possible. We could only be so successful. But a really good read, definitely worth the money. And I will say without a doubt, I am looking at Doomsday Clock 11. Hope you enjoyed yourself. I'll see you next time.